and gentlemen, is Transforming BFSI, the cultural carriers and a neuromarketing solution. To talk about this a lot more, we have with us the presence of Sandeep Waluj, Group Chief Marketing Officer, Motilal Oswal Financial Services. Please give it up for Sandeep ji, everybody. Thank you so much.
Okay, good evening everyone. I think it was the end of the day and I'll ensure that those of you who listen to me will have a little bit of a fun. Alright? Okay, with that promise, let me ask you two questions. And the answer to those questions will get us all into the mood for this very small presentation. Don't worry, I'm not going to bore you, and as I said, I'll try and kind of make it a little more interesting. The first question, how many of you do not want to be rich? Everyone wants to be rich? Right. How many of you are fully satisfied with the financial planning that you have put in place? The asset classes, the diversification, the tracking, all the right stocks in the portfolio. How many of you are perfectly happy? Yeah? Alright, so that is really the topic of this keynote. Why is it that everyone wants to be rich? Right? Everyone wants to, the whole thing we do from morning till evening is for financial upliftment. But as the previous panel said, the financial literacy, the penetration of financial products in this India, in this country is less than 2% or less than 3%. It sounds very, very difficult to understand, right? I mean, this country that does jugaad for everything else, somehow avoids the money question, right? So, why is it that we avoid the money question? Many years ago, we commissioned Future Brands. Their logo appears somewhere on my presentation. Santosh Desai and team did fabulous job of talking to 1,500 families across the country. So the next 4 or 5 slides that I'm going to be showing you is the summary of that finding, which got to the core of this problem as to why is it that people avoid investing. And that therefore the first part of that answer is that there is a very strong sociological force that is preventing people from being careful about their money, and I'll talk to you about that. So my presentation has 3 parts. First is the sociology of money. The second is a neuromarketing perspective, which tells you how the problem is complicated by our own brain chemistry. And then I'll give you some solutions, which are logical from these two, and then of course from our experiences. So what is the sociology of money? Obviously, as I said, the question is that why is money so resistant to change, right? Why is it that we don't do money management, as was very clearly demonstrated by this august audience? The answer is that money, the beginning of civilization, or when money was invented, very quickly came into being a universal medium, right? So it could translate anything into anything else. Now, while that sounds positive, it is also negative, as the next slide will tell you, because it is capable of putting a value on everything. Right? It can put value on even the good things in life. Therefore, our forefathers of civilization realized that this is a fire. Right? So, because somebody who has a money, even if that person does not have enough virtues or enough wisdom or enough knowledge or enough respectability in the society, very often the members of the society have to acquiesce before that person. So, it's actually not a right thing, and then therefore it was seen to be a fire, very dangerous force. It dissolves all the differences that are there on the basis of culture. Yeah, you get it? The very wise man in a village has to bow down in front of a zamindar who may not be as virtuous or even as learned. So when they realized that, what they did was they put this elaborate chains around money. Right? So they realized that the money needs to be contained. And those cultural systems, there are 4 of them. Right? First is that we made money into something that is need-based and not desire-based. That's the only thing in our life we are taught is zarurat se zyada paisa saath mein mat rakho. If you go to discourse of any of the religious spiritual leaders, first thing they will tell you is that do not run after money. Right? They will never tell you do not run after knowledge, do not love after love, do not run after friendship, but do not run after money is what is the cultural tenets across the civilization, not just Indian civilization. We made frugality a virtue. इतना अमीर आदमी है but देखो कितना सादा रहता है. That's a virtue, correct? We never say कितना intelligent आदमी है but बातें पागलों जैसी करता है. That is not something that you are proud of, right? Money has auspiciousness. Lakshmi का अपमान नहीं करते, right? There is also that because you want people to respect money. And then there are responsibilities on our shoulders. So you're growing up, you have your family to look after, you have your community to look after, you have your country to look after, you need to give back to humanity. When there is somebody filthy rich people, then at the end of the interview ask him, what about, philanthropy? And so on and so forth, right? So that we have put chains around money because money has that little fire kind of effect. Only a few could harness money, correct? Only a few people knew how to manage money, those are businessmen or whatever. And that was looked down upon culturally, right? So culture after culture, from Shakespeare to, the Hindi novels, there is always that exploitative money lender and a loud businessman. Earning money is almost always looked down upon. It's again because rooted into this whole need to put chains around money and to reduce this whole destructive power of money. If you go to any average Hindi movie, you will typically, not now anymore, but in 90s, etc., when I was growing up, there was a sentence or a dialogue like that, अगर अमीरी इंसान को वही बना देती है जो आप बन गए हो, तो भगवान का शुक्र है कि हम अमीर नहीं रहे. What does that tell you? Somewhere, lack of surplus was compensated with respect, dignity, and morality. Right? So this whole nichode of thousands of years of genetic programming that has made us into complicated souls. When it comes to money, we kind of close down. As I said earlier, money is also the auspicious in the form of Lakshmi. Shagun ke paise, Sukh Samriddhi. You get Sukh Samriddhi because the goddess Lakshmi blesses you. And obviously the name of the goddess changes as per the religion. But somebody has to bless you to be rich. But, everything else you kind of earn. But money is not in your hand. You need to have blessings of someone to get money. Right? चंचला, लक्ष्मी चंचला होती है. परमात्मा देता है तो चप्पर फाड़ के देता है, लेता है तो भी चप्पर फाड़ के लेता है. So basically you are prepared for the volatility, the fact that there could be money some days, there could not be money some days, but then you want to have a good quality of life. All this gets into this whole realization that our forefathers had at the beginning of civilization, that only control on money is to control on self. And which is why this elaborate philosophy, religion, some wise men said that the religion is the biggest sponge of the surface of earth. It kind of came into existence because you needed to control on that, right? So जितनी अपनी पैर है उतनी ही, जितनी अपनी चादर है उतनी अपने पैर पसारी है kind of. Every expense has been traditionally begrudged. Okay? Extra dhaniya, recycling. There is this bag in every household which has got the rest of the bags inside, right? We do all of that. Essentially because we have been taught, practice frugality. In our culture, enjoyment or having a good life was segregated from having money. You do not need money to take part in many of our festivals, right? You simply have to be having the faith, and then you're allowed. Many communities have langars and so on and so forth. So you don't really need money to belong to our society. This has also been designed to ensure that the importance of money is reduced to the extent that it is almost something that you could kind of manage without. And therefore two classes of people have emerged, right? People who have money and people who do not have money. Mainstream, who are money outsiders, most of us, and the specialists who are money insiders. Now if you look at those outsiders, okay, these people will look at money as a tool to measure yourself. Right? आपकी तनख्वाह कितनी है, आपकी गाड़ी कितनी बड़ी है, आपका घर कितना बड़ा है, and somewhere that has become not my potential to earn returns later on, but what is it that I have today. So it has somehow become a report card of life and measure of life, and not really something that you build life with. But if you look at the specialists, okay, these are the firefighters. I'm talking about those communities who are taught and who are comfortable handling money, will very quickly realize that they understand the riskiness of money, but they control it. There are elaborate systems, in place. In Marwadis, for example, there is a separate accounting system that can give you a P&L at the end of the day. Those systems are in place in those communities. They also separate, the money that is required for the business and the money that is there for your consumption. That is separated. Very clearly knowing that you cannot display money until very recently. Of course, now everything is changing, but until very recently, those people would not disclose or display the money ostentatiously. The old culture of money was extremely overt. Now, the specialists, use money to make money. They understand the time value of money. They understand that the business is to be done on other person's money. And then they make money. They use money to make money, but the janta is kind of kept outside, right? And somewhere because of all this, we have kind of told ourselves that money is not to be managed, right? Investment is the only place where Indians go. Right? Now, this is the reason why we don't do it, right? So there is this whole elaborate. The earlier panel spoke about insurance. Now, insurance is understood because it is social insurance. Fixed deposit is understood because it is security, right? So people understand security, but not investment, which is why the job of me and my colleagues is very, very difficult. SIP is converts investment into expense. So 10,000 rupees per month for my future car is understood, right? But 10,000 rupees invested into a stock because it will compound, etc., becomes very complicated. So that was the first part of it, right? The second part of it, this is neuromarketing perspective, and this will tell you as to why getting out of this conundrum, because whatever is taught to us culturally, it's very difficult to get out of till the time we use our thoughts, till the time we actually consciously decide not to do it. That's the way you break out of a habit. So this habit has been inculcated because of thousands of years of genetic programming. If you need to get out of it, you need to use the thinking brain that you have. Now there is the second problem that we have. The second problem is this. Okay, some of you would be aware that human brain is not a contiguous thing. There are 4 different layers to that. I'll very, very quickly brush that off. At the very, very core is something known as amygdala that got developed about 500 billion years ago. All animals have that. It's a very, very tiny brain. It is able to process only 3 Fs: food, fight, and flight. There is 4th F. All of you know what that is, right? So those are the 4 Fs that this brain is supposed to control. And all insects, etc., would have it. This is the oldest part of the human brain. Then some of the reptilians developed this reptilian brain about 250 billion years ago. It has got some basic body functions, consciousness, etc., is kind of controlled. So, the snakes would have little more of intelligence than ants, for example. Then there is the mammals. Right? Mammals have something known as mammalian brain that got developed about 2.5 million years ago. So it's extremely young. It's very, very fresh brain. This is the brain that has got emotions and feelings. Right? That's why, therefore, a dog will treat its baby properly, but a bird or maybe a fish wouldn't even know that he has had baby and kind of move on. So those feelings are not there if you're not a mammal. Right? So mammals have a brain that is able to process emotions. Now that's also extremely young, 1.5 million years old. So in terms of the scale of time, it is barely a day or 2 old. And then we have the human brain. Right? So this pink thing is what makes us what we are. Right? That's the one where all the language gets processed, all the thinking happens, all the rationality happens. And if you were to override any of these natural urges, this is the guy that needs to tell you that you need to overcome that urge, right? Which is why we behave in public, which is why we do dress properly and so on and so forth. This big brain is telling you to do that. Now the challenge is, because it is extremely new, it's barely 2 lakh years ago. So that's about 1 hour old in terms of the age of the universe or age of the evolution. Because it is extremely new, because it is very, very difficult to use this brain. Right? This brain takes about 30% of all the food, 25% of all the blood oxygen, etc. goes into just maintaining that. Because it is such an expensive apparatus, again, culturally, we have been taught not to use the brain until and unless there is some motivation to use it. Correct? So therefore, as a result of which, about 95% of everything that you do on a daily basis is either managed by reflex action, okay, or this conditioning that has happened. Which is why when somebody touches you in the local train, your first response is kya hai? And so you think later on, your first immediate reaction is controlled by this little brain. Now the challenge is, because this guy consumes 30-40% of your energy, to activate that, you really need to be in the frame of mind. You need to be made comfortable. You need to feel secure. You need to trust the person that is talking to you. Only then will you listen. Therefore, when a little child will listen to its mother, where you want to placate a little baby, you need to give him food or a hug or a kiss or whatever. That's the reason. Now the challenge is that all those cultural barriers that I spoke of, if you need to overtake them, you need to switch on this big brain. Now, in order to switch on this big brain, it's difficult because it's not going to get switched on till the time following things happen. So, part 3 of my presentation is the solution. And I call this chemical locha, borrowed from Munabai. The chemical locha are the neurochemicals that can activate the brain, get into the thinking mode. And that thinking mode is driven by some of the personal hormones like endorphins and dopamines. And I'll not get into those details because I'm sure WhatsApp users, yes, read us all of us experts on that. But serotonin is the one that I want to talk about. Serotonin is the trust hormone. Right? So if I see you more often, if I see you being a good Samaritan, if I see you helping someone else, then I develop trust in you. In order for me to develop trust in you, there needs to be serotonin secreting in my brain. Now the serotonin will only secrete if you are familiarity, if you trust, you have simplistic understanding, etc. And therefore, my lesson to my fellow marketeers is here are the 5 things that we could possibly do to help overcome this problem of low penetration. The first is keep driving familiarity. Right? You need to keeping on saying the same thing, you need to keep on kind of underlying the message, etc. Because stronger bonds lead to acceptance and loyalty. Right? It's always a function of familiarity. Many times we see someone while walking, while jogging or kind of taking a morning walk, we see somebody 15 times, we smile, right? We somewhere feel that there is some kind of a bond. So that's the familiarity. The second is we see providing help, right? We are programmed to promote helping and cooperation as a society. So therefore, a brand that is seen to be helping people, not just to investors but also helping humanity, Tata's is a great example. I mean, you might have had bad experiences with one company of Tata, but that does not shake the faith that you have in the brand because you see them in humanity. The third one is clarity and transparency, right? Because that big thing is very, very difficult to switch on. When you put on what is known as cognitive load, when it is difficult to understand something, you switch on. Right? Because there is no incentive for you to spend so much of energy into switching on that. So clarity and transparency in your communication helps. Honesty and consistency in your actions is another thing which will develop trust and get serotonin secret and therefore probably you kind of cut through. And finally, make the people feel welcome. Right? Comfort is the stepping stone of lasting relationship. The brands that take care of customer experience, that make the customer feel welcome, that are accessible, do not use jargon and kind of simplify things, are the brands that get into being loved. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I've tried doing it in as less time as possible. I hope you found it interesting. All the best for using it and making BFSI penetration, and make the benefit of financial planning reach the masses in this society. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Request you to wait until बजाइए जोर से ताली.